The celestial waypoint was an ugly place. It floated in the dark space between two star systems, far from anything beautiful or important. It was a truck stop for travelers, a refueling station for ships, and a hiding spot for criminals who did not want to be found. The walls were stained with years of grease and smoke. The lights flickered. The air smelled like burnt food and engine oil. Nobody came here because they wanted to. They came because they had no other choice. Had worked at the diner for 4 years. She was 23 years old, small and thin, with tired eyes and hands that were rough from washing dishes. She worked the night shift because nobody else wanted it. She served food to miners and smugglers and drifters who never looked at her face, never learned her name, and never said thank you. She was human. In the galaxy, that meant she was nothing special. Humanity had joined the Galactic Collective 80 years ago, when the first alien ships had appeared above Earth. The aliens had not come to conquer or destroy. They had come because they were curious. They studied humans the way a scientist might study insects. Interesting, but not important. Useful for simple work, but nothing more. Humans were weak. Humans were slow. Humans lived short lives and died easy deaths. The galaxy was full of species that were stronger, smarter, and older. Species that had built empires while humans were still living in caves. So humans took the jobs nobody else wanted. They cleaned floors and served food and fixed broken machines. They were invisible. They were forgotten. Was used to being invisible. She had learned to move through the diner like a ghost, refilling drinks and clearing plates without making a sound. She had learned to keep her head down and her mouth shut. She had learned that nobody cared what she thought or felt or wanted. But she had also learned something else, something that nobody expected. She had learned to watch. When you are invisible, you see things that others miss. You notice the small details that powerful people ignore. You learn to read faces and voices and movements. You learn to sense danger before it arrives. Tonight sensed danger. It started when the dragon walked in. He was not a dragon like the ones in Earth stories. He was one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. His body was covered in scales that shimmered like black glass. His eyes glowed with a fire that seemed to burn from somewhere deep inside. His claws clicked against the metal floor as he walked. His tail swept behind him like a weapon waiting to strike. He was beautiful and terrible. He moved like he owned the universe, and maybe he did. The other customers in the diner pressed themselves against the walls, trying to make themselves small. Even the smugglers and criminals were afraid. Was afraid too, but she had a job to do. She picked up her notepad and walked to his table. The dragon looked at her with ancient eyes. There was no warmth in his gaze, no kindness. He saw her the way everyone saw her, a small, weak human, a servant, nothing. "What can I get you?" asked. Her voice was steady. She had learned to hide her fear a long time ago. The dragon's lips curled back, showing teeth that could tear through metal. "Water," he said. His voice was deep and cold like stones grinding together. "Clean water, if your kind can manage that." Nodded and turned away. She walked toward the kitchen, her heart beating fast in her chest. As she passed the serving window, she let her eyes move across the diner. And that was when she saw them. 3 figures sat in the corner booth. They wore dark cloaks that hid their faces. Their hands were hidden under the table. They were watching the dragon and their bodies were tense, like hunters waiting to strike. Had seen enough dangerous people to know what they were, assassins. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what she saw under the dragon's seat. There was a small device attached to the bottom of the chair. It was almost invisible, just a faint shimmer in the air, but had cleaned every inch of this diner 1,000 times. She knew every scratch and stain on every surface. She knew that device had not been there an hour ago. She knew what it was. A gravity snare. She had heard stories about them. Military weapons banned in most systems. They created a field of crushing force that activated when the target moved. One wrong shift in weight, one attempt to stand up, and the field would compress everything inside it into a tiny ball. Flesh and bone and scale, all crushed together in an instant. If the dragon moved, he would die. Stood frozen by the kitchen window. Her mind was racing. She could walk away. She could pretend she had seen nothing. The dragon was not her friend. He was not even her species. He had looked at her like she was less than dirt. Why should she care if he died? But she could not walk away. She did not know why. Maybe it was because she was tired of being invisible. Maybe it was because she wanted to prove that humans were more than servants. Maybe it was because she believed that killing should be a choice made in the open, not a trap set in the shadows. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe she just could not stand by and watch someone die when she had the power to stop it. Filled a glass with water. Her hands were shaking, but she forced them to be still. She tore a small piece of paper from her notepad and wrote 5 words in quick, messy letters. Then she walked back to the dragon's table. She set down the glass of water. She placed the note beneath his claws, hiding it from the assassins in the corner. Her heart was pounding so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. The dragon looked down at the note. His eyes narrowed. The words were simple. "You're in a snare, don't move." For a long moment, nothing happened. The diner continued its quiet hum of conversation and clinking dishes. The assassins in the corner watched and waited. Then the dragon's eyes lifted to Meat's. She had expected anger. She had expected disbelief. She had expected him to ignore her because she was just a human, and what could a human possibly know about danger? But what she saw in his eyes was something else entirely. Surprise. And behind the surprise, something that looked almost like respect. He spoke without moving his jaw, his voice barely louder than a breath. "Who are you?" Swallowed hard. "Night shift," she said. And somewhere in the shadows, the assassins began to move, had lived for 300 years. In that time, he had seen empires rise and fall. He had fought in wars that burned across entire star systems. He had killed enemies with his claws and his fire and his cold, patient cunning. He had survived 17 assassination attempts, each one more clever than the last. But he had never been warned by a human. He sat perfectly still in his chair, feeling the faint hum of the gravity snare beneath him. Now that he knew it was there, he could sense it. The slight wrongness in the air. The invisible pressure waiting to crush him into nothing. The human girl stood before him. She was small and fragile, with dark hair pulled back from a tired face. Her hands were rough from hard work. Her uniform was stained and worn. She was nobody. Nothing. The kind of creature he would normally ignore completely. But she had seen the snare when he had not. She had chosen to warn him when she could have stayed silent. She was shaking with fear, but she had not run away. Was not used to being surprised. He found that he did not entirely hate the feeling. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Moving his jaw too much might trigger the snare. "Why warn me?" His eyes met his. There was fear there, but also something harder, something that refused to bend. "Because killing should be a choice," she said, "not a trap." In the corner booth, the assassins were getting restless. Could see them from the edge of his vision. 3 of them. The leader was a species with 4 arms and eyes like an insect. The other 2 were mercenaries, distant cousins of his own people, but without honor or loyalty. They touched his earpiece. He had noticed that and were talking. He was getting suspicious. His mind worked quickly. The snare was sophisticated technology, made, which was ironic. It would activate the moment he shifted his weight. He could not fight, he could not run, he could not even breathe too deeply. But maybe he did not need to do any of those things. "The device," he breathed. "There must be a trigger, a remote detonator." Gave the smallest nod. The left side of his belt, small black cylinder with a magnetic clasp. "I saw it when they came in." stared at her. This tiny human had not only spotted the snare, she had identified the triggering mechanism. She had been watching the assassins from the moment they entered the diner. She had been gathering information, making plans, preparing for a moment that might never come. Who was this creature? If I can get the detonator, said, I can disable the snare, but I need a distraction, something to draw their attention away from me. Was quiet for a moment, then she said, I'm going to drop my tray. What? When I drop my tray, everyone will look at me. The noise, the mess, the stupid, clumsy human making a fool of herself. They won't be able to help it. You'll have maybe 2 seconds. 2 seconds is not enough time. It's enough time to cross the room and grab the detonator. Her voice was calm now, like she had moved past her fear into something else, something colder. I've seen how fast your kind can move. You can do it. Looked at the distance between his table and the corner booth. 15 feet. An easy distance for a warrior, but 2 seconds was still cutting it close. If they reacted fast enough, if his hand reached the detonator before reached him. Trust me, said. It was such a strange thing to hear. Trust. A human asking a dragon to trust her. It should have been laughable. It should have been insulting. But looked into her eyes and saw something he had not seen in a long time. Certainty. This small, weak, invisible human was certain that her plan would work. She was betting her life on it. Do it, said. Picked up her serving tray. She turned and walked toward the kitchen, her steps slow and casual. 3 paces, 4, 5. Then her foot caught on a chair leg. The tray flew from her hands. Dishes shattered against the floor. Glasses exploded into fragments of spinning light. Synthetic protein splattered across the ground in a spreading pool of brown and gray. Fell hard, crying out in pain that might have been real or might have been acting. Every head in the diner turned toward her. The compound eyes swiveled. His 4 hands twitched. For 1 precious second he was not watching. 1 second was enough. Moved. 300 years of battle had made his body a perfect weapon. He crossed the 15 feet in a blur of black scales and burning eyes. His claws closed around this belt before the assassin could even process what was happening. He ripped the detonator free and crushed it in his palm, feeling the delicate circuits shatter beneath his grip. Behind him, the gravity snare flickered and died. The screamed and reached for his weapon, too slow. His other hand was already moving, claws slashing across the assassin's throat in a spray of dark blood. The 2 mercenaries scrambled to their feet, pulling knives that gleamed with molecular edges. They were fast. They were trained. They were already dead. Killed the first one with a strike to the chest that crushed his heart. He killed the second one with a bite to the neck that nearly took his head off. The whole fight lasted less than 10 seconds. When it was over, stood in a circle of broken bodies. His scales were slick with blood that was not his own. His breath came hard and fast. The fire in his eyes burned brighter than ever. The diner had gone completely silent. Everyone was frozen in place, too terrified to move or speak. The only sound was the soft drip of cooling blood pooling on the floor. Pushed herself up from the ground. There was a cut on her forehead from where she had fallen. She did not seem to notice. She was staring at with wide eyes, but not with fear. With wonder. You're bleeding, she said, pointing to his arm. Looked down. One of them had managed to cut him during the fight. A shallow wound across his forearm. It would heal in hours, but she was right. He was bleeding. He had been so focused on the kill that he had not even noticed. You saved my life, he said. Shook her head. I dropped a tray. You did more than that. Stepped toward her and she did not step back. You saw what no one else saw. You acted when no one else would. You trusted a dragon to trust you. Behind them, the station's security forces were finally arriving. Officers in dull armor pushed through the doors, weapons raised, shouting for everyone to freeze. Ignored them, he was still looking at. What is your name? He asked. He spoke the words slowly, like he was tasting something valuable. I am of the Dominion, warlord of the Outer Territories, and I owe you a debt that I can never repay. Almost laughed. I'm just a waitress. No, said, you are much more than that, you just don't know it yet. The security officers were getting closer now, their shouts growing louder, but did not look away from his face. He had found something unexpected in this ugly, forgotten place, something that might change everything. He had found a human who could see. The security officers surrounded them. There were 12 of them, wearing scratched armor and carrying weapons that had seen better days. Their leader was a fat with gray skin and small, nervous eyes. He looked at the 3 dead bodies on the floor, then back at the bodies. He was trying to decide if he should arrest a warlord. The sweat on his face showed that he already knew the answer. There has been an incident, the said carefully. We will need to investigate. His eyes burned with cold fire. These 3 attempted to assassinate me. I defended myself. The investigation is complete. But the paperwork can be handled by my people. Reached into his robe and pulled out a small metal card. He tossed it to the who caught it with shaking hands. Contact this frequency. They will send someone to clean up this mess and pay for any damages. The looked at the card. His small eyes went wide when he saw the symbol stamped on its surface. The mark of the Dominion, one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. He bowed so quickly that he almost fell over. Of course, my lord, of course. We are honored to be of service. Ignored him, he turned back to. She was still standing where she had fallen, surrounded by broken dishes and spilled food. There was blood on her uniform, though none of it was hers. Her face was pale. Her hands were trembling, but her eyes were clear and steady. She had seen violence before, realized. She had learned to survive it. Come with me, he said. Blink to what? Come with me, leave this place. He gestured at the dirty diner, the flickering lights, the terrified customers pressing themselves against the walls. You are wasted here. For a long moment, did not speak. She looked around the diner that had been her prison for 4 years, the place where she had worked and suffered and been invisible, the place where nobody had ever seen her as anything more than a servant. I don't understand, she said finally. Why do you want me to come with you? I'm nobody, I'm just a human. Stepped closer. He was much taller than her and his shadow fell across her like a dark wave, but there was no threat in his posture, only curiosity, only interest. Among my people, he said, there is a concept called the life debt. When someone saves your life, you owe them a debt that can never be fully repaid. It binds you to them until the day you die. I didn't save your life, You saw a trap that I did not see. You warned me when you could have stayed silent. You risked your own safety to protect a stranger who had shown you nothing but contempt. His voice was quiet but intense. In 300 years of life, I have never met anyone who would do what you did tonight, human or otherwise. Shook her head. You don't know me. You don't know anything about me. Then teach me. The words hung in the air between them, stared at, trying to understand what was happening. A warlord, one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, was asking her to join him, to leave behind everything she knew, to become something more than a forgotten waitress in a forgotten diner. It was insane. It was impossible. It was the kind of thing that only happened in stories. But when she looked into his burning eyes, she saw that he was completely serious. What would I even do? She asked. I can't fight. I can't fly a ship. I don't know anything about politics or war or... You know how to see, interrupted. You know how to watch and listen and notice the things that others miss. That is a rare gift, rarer than strength, rarer than speed, rarer than all the weapons and armies in the galaxy. Was quiet for a long time. She thought about her life, the endless days of serving food and cleaning floors, the nights spent alone in her tiny room, staring at the ceiling and wondering if this was all there would ever be. The feeling of being invisible, of being nothing, of being less than the dirt beneath her feet. She thought about her mother, who had worked herself to death in a factory on Earth. She thought about her father, who had disappeared when she was young. She thought about all the humans she had known, struggling and suffering and dying in a galaxy that did not care if they lived or died. And she thought about the moment when she had seen the gravity snare beneath's chair, the choice she had made, the person she had been in that instant when she had decided to act instead of look away. Maybe that person was who she really was. Maybe she had been hiding her whole life, and tonight was the first time she had let herself be seen. "If I come with you," she said slowly, "what happens next?" Smiled. It was a strange expression on his dragon face, all teeth and burning eyes, but somehow it did not look threatening. It looked almost kind. "Next," he said, "you learn, you grow, you become the person you were meant to be." "And what person is that?" "I don't know yet, neither do you, that's the point." He extended his clawed hand toward her. "Take a chance, see what you can become when you stop being invisible." Looked at his hand. She looked at the diner behind her, with its blood-stained floor and terrified customers and broken dreams. She looked at the security officers, who were carefully avoiding her eyes, already forgetting that she existed. She had been invisible her whole life. She had been nothing. She had been forgotten. But tonight, a dragon had seen her. A dragon had noticed her. A dragon had said that she was worth something. Maybe it was time to find out if he was right. Reached out and took's hand. His claws closed gently around her fingers, warm and strong. And in that moment, something changed. The invisible waitress, the forgotten human, began to fade away, and something new began to take her place. "I have a ship waiting at the docking bay," said. "We leave in 1 hour. I need to get my things. Do you have anything worth taking?" Thought about her tiny room, the worn clothes in her closet, the broken lamp by her bed, the photograph of her mother that she kept hidden in a drawer. "Just one thing," she said, "a picture." "Then get it, and meet me at Bay 17. Nodded. She pulled her hand free and started walking toward the back of the diner, where the stairs led up to the staff quarters. Her legs were shaking. Her heart was pounding, but her steps were steady. Behind her, she heard speaking to the security officers, his voice cold and commanding. She heard the other customers whispering to each other, their voices full of fear and confusion. But she did not look back. She had spent 4 years looking back, looking down, looking away. Tonight, she was going to start looking forward. She climbed the stairs to her room, grabbed the photograph of her mother, and walked out of the celestial waypoint forever. 6 months passed like a strange dream. Had expected to feel lost in this world. She had expected to feel small and weak and out of place. She had expected the other to look at her with disgust, the way everyone had always looked at humans. Some of them did, but fewer than she had thought. His inner circle was made up of warriors and generals who had served him for centuries. They were proud and fierce and suspicious of outsiders. When first arrived, they had barely looked at her. She was just another human servant beneath their notice, but had not brought her to serve. "Watch," he told her on her first day. "Listen, tell me what you see." So she watched. She listened. She sat in the corners of meeting rooms and walked through the halls of great warship. She studied the generals as they argued about strategy. She observed the soldiers as they trained. She paid attention to the small things that everyone else ignored. And slowly, she began to understand. They were powerful, but they were also blind. They had ruled for so long that they had forgotten how to see threats. They trusted their strength to solve every problem. They believed that no enemy could match them, so they stopped looking for enemies in the shadows. Had spent her whole life in the shadows. She knew how dangerous they could be. The first time she spoke up was during a meeting about a trade dispute. Two of its generals were arguing about whether to send ships to protect a mining colony that was being harassed by pirates. One general wanted to send a full battle fleet. The other thought it was a waste of resources. Had been sitting in the corner, invisible as always. But she had been studying the reports, reading the messages, looking at the patterns that the generals had ignored. "It's not pirates," she said. Everyone stopped talking. The generals turned to stare at her, their eyes burning with annoyance. Who was this human to interrupt a military council? But raised a clawed hand, let her speak. Stood up, her heart was pounding but her voice was steady. The attacks on the mining colony follow a pattern. They happen every 3 weeks, always at the same time, always targeting the same shipping routes. Real pirates would be random. They would attack when they saw opportunity, not on a schedule. She walked to the holographic display and pointed to a series of star systems. These are the systems that border the colony. One of them belongs to House. They've been trying to buy the colony for years, but the colonists refused to sell. The generals looked at each other. House was one of its rivals, a powerful family with ambitions that stretched across the outer territories. "You think House is behind the attacks?" one of the generals asked. His voice was skeptical but also curious. "I think they're making the colony look like a bad investment," said. "They want to scare away the traders and the workers. Then, when the colony is weak and desperate, House will offer to buy them out for a fraction of what they're worth." His eyes were burning bright. "Can you prove this?" "Not yet. But if you look at the shipping records from House territory, I think you'll find some interesting gaps. Ships that disappeared for a few days, then reappeared without explanation. Ships that were in exactly the right place to attack the colony and then escape before anyone could identify them." The generals were silent. They had been arguing about whether to send a fleet or ignore the problem. Had just shown them that the real problem was something else entirely. Smiled his terrible smile. "Check the shipping records," he told his generals, "all of them." 3 days later, they found the proof. House had been using their own ships to attack the colony, disguised as pirates. When presented the evidence to the Galactic Council, House was humiliated. Their reputation was destroyed. Their allies abandoned them, and was no longer invisible. After that, brought her to every meeting. He asked for her opinion on every decision. He introduced her to his allies and his enemies, and he watched their faces when they realized that the small human girl was not a servant. She was an advisor. Not everyone was happy about it. Some of the generals resented her. They had served for centuries and now a human was telling them what to do. They whispered behind her back. They questioned her loyalty. They looked for ways to prove that she was not worth his attention. Ignored them. She had spent her whole life being invisible. Being seen was strange, but it was also wonderful. She was not going to let anyone take it away from her. The months passed, and her reputation grew. She uncovered a plot to poison one of his allies. She predicted a rebellion in the border territories before it happened. She found a spy hiding in the communications department, selling secrets to his enemies. Each time the pattern was the same. She watched, she listened. She noticed the things that others missed, and she spoke up even when everyone thought she was wrong. She was not always right. Sometimes her guesses were incorrect. Sometimes she saw patterns that were not really there, but more often than not she was correct. And slowly the generals stopped resenting her. They started listening to her. They started asking for her opinion. One night called her to his private quarters. She found him standing by a large window, looking out at the stars. "Do you know why I brought you here?" he asked without turning around. Stood beside him. "The stars were beautiful, cold and distant and endless, because I saved your life." "That's part of it, but not all of it." He turned to face her. His ancient eyes were thoughtful. "I brought you here because you see things differently than we do. You notice what we overlook. You think in ways that we cannot." "I'm not smarter than you," said. I'm not stronger or faster or older. No, but you're human. Paused, choosing his words carefully. My people have been powerful for a long time, too long perhaps. We have forgotten what it means to struggle. We have forgotten what it means to be weak. We look at the universe and see only what we expect to see. He gestured toward the stars. But humans have not forgotten. You are still fighting for survival. You are still learning and growing and adapting. You see the universe as it really is, not as you wish it to be. Thought about this. She thought about all the humans she had known, working hard and dying young in a galaxy that did not value them. She thought about her mother, who had never stopped fighting even when everything was against her. We don't have a choice, she said finally. When you're weak, you have to see clearly. If you don't, you die. Nodded slowly. That is exactly my point. Strength can make you blind. Weakness can make you wise. He put a clawed hand on her shoulder. You are wise, wiser than you know, and I am very glad that you dropped that tray. Laughed. It was the first time she had laughed in a very long time. Outside the window, the stars continued to burn, cold and distant and endless. But somehow, they did not seem quite so far away anymore. The Battle of the Crimson Nebula would be remembered for 10,000 years. It started with a message. 6 weeks before the battle, noticed something strange in the shipping reports. A small increase in fuel purchases across 4 different star systems. The increases were tiny, almost invisible. Most people would have ignored them completely. But did not ignore small things. She traced the fuel purchases through a maze of shell companies and false names. She followed the money across star systems and through hidden accounts, and what she found made her blood run cold. 4 major houses had formed a secret alliance against. House, still hungry for revenge after their humiliation. House, jealous of growing power. House and House, ambitious and greedy and tired of living in shadow. Together, they had assembled a fleet 3 times the size of S. They had bought off the Galactic Collective's peacekeeping forces. They had chosen the perfect location for an ambush, the Crimson Nebula, where the swirling gases would hide their approach until it was too late. They were going to destroy and take everything he had built. But they had made one mistake. They had assumed that no one would notice their preparations. They had assumed that their enemy was blind. They had not counted on. For the next 6 weeks, worked without rest. She studied every detail of the enemy's plan. She mapped their fleet positions and calculated their attack vectors. She predicted exactly where they would strike and exactly how they would try to win. And then she designed a trap of her own. They expect us to be scattered, she told and his generals, pointing to a holographic map of the nebula. They expect to catch us by surprise and destroy us before we can organize a defense. So we're going to give them exactly what they expect. She touched the display, and dozens of small dots appeared throughout the nebula. These are sensor ghosts, fake readings that will make our fleet look weak and disorganized. When the enemy sees them, they'll think they've already won. They'll concentrate their forces in these 3 zones for maximum devastation. Her finger moved to 3 points on the map. That's where we put the gravity mines. The generals stared at her. Gravity mines were powerful weapons, but they required perfect placement. If the mines were even slightly out of position, they would be useless. Getting the placement right was almost impossible. How can you know where they'll concentrate their forces? One general asked. Because I've studied their commanders, said. I know how they think. I know what they value. I know what they fear. She looked around the table, meeting each pair of burning eyes. They believe they're stronger than us. They believe they've already won. That belief is going to destroy them. Smiled his terrible smile. Do it. The day of the battle arrived. Fleet waited in the crimson mists of the nebula, hidden and silent. The sensor ghosts flickered across enemy displays, showing a weak and scattered force. Everything looked exactly as the enemy expected. And then the trap was sprung. The Allied fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Hundreds of warships, each one bristling with weapons. They outnumbered forces 3-1. Their commanders were confident, even eager. This was going to be a massacre. They flew straight into the gravity mines. The first wave was obliterated in seconds. Ships crumpled like paper as the gravity fields crushed them. Explosions bloomed across the nebula in flowers of fire and twisted metal. Thousands of enemy soldiers died before they could fire a single shot. The second wave tried to retreat, but had predicted this too. Reserve forces were waiting behind them, hidden in the magnetic interference of the nebula. The retreating ships flew straight into a wall of fire. The third wave surrendered. When the battle was over, the Allied fleet was destroyed. The four great houses had lost everything: their ships, their soldiers, their power. Their commanders knelt before his throne, broken and defeated. One of them, the leader of house, looked up with hatred in his eyes. "How?" he demanded. "How did you know? How did you see through our plans?" Rose from his throne. His scales gleamed in the dim light. His eyes burned like stars. He was terrifying and beautiful, a dragon in all his glory. "I didn't see," he said. "She did." He gestured and stepped forward from the shadows. The enemy commanders stared at her. A human. A small, weak, insignificant human. They had been destroyed by a creature they would not have noticed if they had passed her on the street. "This is impossible," one of them whispered. "A human couldn't." "A human did," interrupted. His voice was cold and final. "You looked at the universe and saw what you expected to see. She looked at the universe and saw what was really there. That is why you lost. That is why you will always lose." He turned to his generals. "Take them away." The defeated commanders were dragged from the throne room, still staring at with disbelief. She watched them go, her face calm and unreadable. When they were gone, turned to her. "You saved us all," he said, again. Shook her head. "I just noticed some fuel purchases." "You noticed everything. You saw what no one else could see. You found patterns in chaos and meaning in noise." He stepped closer to her. "When I found you in that diner, I knew you were special. I did not know how special. I did not know that you would change everything." "I didn't change anything. I just watched." "Watching is the beginning of all change." His voice was soft now, almost gentle. "My people have forgotten that. We have become so focused on strength that we forgot the value of sight. You reminded us." Looked out the window at the Crimson Nebula, still burning with the fires of the destroyed fleet. She thought about her mother, who had worked so hard and died so young. She thought about all the humans in the galaxy, struggling and suffering and being overlooked. And she thought about the girl she had been, 6 months ago, the invisible waitress who had dropped a tray to save a dragon's life. "Humans aren't weak," she said quietly. "We're just different. We don't have scales or claws or centuries of life, but we have something else. We have eyes that see. We have minds that notice. We have hearts that refuse to look away." Nodded slowly. "Yes, that is exactly what you have." He turned to face the burning nebula. The galaxy is going to hear about this battle. They're going to hear about the human who defeated 4 great houses, and they're going to wonder what else humans can do. "Let them wonder," said. "Let them watch us and underestimate us and think we're nothing. And when the moment comes, we'll show them the truth." "And what is the truth?" Smiled. It was not a human smile. It was something harder and sharper, something that had been forged in shadows and tempered by survival. "The truth is that the smallest creature in the room might be the most dangerous. The truth is that being invisible is a weapon, if you know how to use it. The truth is that humans have been watching the galaxy for 80 years, learning and growing and waiting." She turned to face. Her eyes were bright with fire that had nothing to do with dragon blood. "And the truth is that our time is coming." Outside the window, the nebula continued to burn, but it was not a funeral pyre. It was a signal fire blazing across the galaxy. The humans were coming, and they were ready to be seen.